advertisers.
Welcome back. With us here in studio, as you can see, a formal tribal court from Spirit Lake Reservation, Molly McDonald. Also someone who's involved with social work there, suicide prevention, Sister Joann, and someone who used to work there in social work, Bettie Jo Krentz. All three of you, thanks for being here. Also joining us from Washington, D.C., Congressman Kevin Cramer. Kevin, thank you so much for taking some time. I know you've been traveling a bunch. Kevin, I want to start here. I just talked in my opening segment about Senator Heidi Heitkamp. Obviously, the native vote had her win this seat, or predominantly, but yet there's not been one public statement from her about the situation that's taking place where kids are being forced to live with convicted sex offenders, being killed. I'm going to ask you, why is she not coming out and being more vocal? She's been vocal about violence against women. She's been vocal now about the sexual assaults and armed forces. Why is she not more vocal about these kids?
Well, Chris, I can't speak to what motivates Senator Heitkamp. I have no doubt that she has great concern about it. I think, frankly, politics being incorporated into it is the problem. The challenge is, what are we going to do about saving kids and helping the most vulnerable? And I think part of it, Chris, starts by being outspoken. As you know, I expressed my outrage about what's going on at Spirit Lake, and in the short term received a lot of criticism from radio show hosts, you, some of the other media, and a few tribal leaders. But at the same time, Chris, I've received literally hundreds of calls for help from Spirit Lake and other reservations saying, please help us, Congressman. You've been willing to speak truth in a dangerous situation. Don't let us down now. And I find myself in this situation where I've kind of put political correctness aside and said, kids are worth the fight. Kids are worth the fight. Regardless of their color, regardless of the color of their leaders, the kids are worth this fight, as well as the women victims on these reservations.
Well, I think you hit on the head, Kevin. The big question is, so what are we going to do to stop? And I guess that's my question for you. The BAA has stepped in and said, hey, we've taken over the social services. Clearly, they're dropping the ball there. So my question to you is, what are you going to do to ensure the safety of these kids?
Well, first of all, putting the BIA in charge of a situation like we have at Spirit Lake is sort of like taking the two worst teams in Major League Baseball and having them swap coaches. That doesn't help either one of them. I have called for a meeting with BIA Director Michael Black for this week. I've called for a meeting with FBI officials through the liaison's office this week and sat in on one conversation already today with the FBI. I just finished a conversation with Congressman Don Young, who is the chairman of the Indian and Alaska Native Affairs Committee, of which I am a member, and said, I want to have a subpoena hearing and I want to have an oversight hearing on this situation. And I said, you've got it. So I know I might be, offending a leader somewhere, another elected official somewhere, but doing nothing is not an option. That is not an option. We're talking about children here.
So that's my question for you. And again, I'm not a legal expert, so when you say we're going to subpoena people, what does that mean specifically? Are you willing to have maybe a congressional hearing about this, put these people on record and say, hey, we got to get to the bottom of this deal?
That's exactly what it means, Chris, because part of the challenge here is getting information. I've written to the BIA about this situation. I've written to the BIA about other situations with regard to fatalities in car accidents on Standing Rock, other situations. And all I ever get back is this shield of protection that they use to say, well, that's confidential. We can't share that with you, Congressman. Freedom of Information Act doesn't apply here. It's an ongoing investigation. Therefore, we can't talk about it. So the only way I can get information is to subpoena it, and I have that authority through my position on the Indian Affairs Subcommittee of Natural Resources, and Chairman Young has told me he'll grant my request for formal hearings on this situation. So we'll be having formal hearings because right now we're dealing with incomplete information. And when I express my outrage and what I'd like to do as a man, then people criticize me for being insensitive. Well, forgive me if I'm being insensitive, but it's not about you. It's about the children and the vulnerable women on these reservations.
So
and I want to applaud the women that are in your studio right now. They are taking tremendous personal risk to do what they're doing tonight, and I want to applaud each of them.
And we're going to incorporate them in just a moment here, but I want to also ask you this. So when you get the subpoena, you get a chance to visit with these people, what answers are you looking for specifically?
Well, first of all, I want to know what crimes have been committed, how well they've been investigated, if at all, what evidence exists, and why are there not more prosecutions taking place? Why are people not going to jail? Secondly, are there people in leadership that are inept, that are incompetent? it seems to me that whoever's supposed to be protecting these women and children aren't doing a very good job of it, and they ought to be replaced if in fact there's a better alternative, and I can't believe there isn't. The other thing I want to find out is how pervasive is this? What are the problems at the BIA that they can take over a situation like this? We continue to have abuse, we continue to have deaths, but they don't have to provide information to members of Congress. This is an epidemic, by the way, among the bureaucracy in this town right now. Nobody's accountable anymore. I don't know what's happened, but so I'm going to find out some of that, and then I want to find out what are some of the solutions. How can we work with tribal leaders and state leaders and federal leaders? Do we need more police, for example, on the ground? I suspect that may be the case. Let's get the resources to the BIA that they need to put adequate police on the ground. So much of this argument, Chris, so many of these issues relate around what are we going to do to the perpetrator after the fact. I want to know what are we going to do about avoiding the perpetrator from carrying out the act of violence in the first place. Big issues, lots of questions. We're a long ways from solving it, but somebody's got to do something.
Kevin, one of the things you got a big response from was you talked about lack of prosecutions and convictions. We had some visceral responses from our guests here in studio, so I want to ask them, what about that statement? And Sister Joann and Betty Jo, I saw you both shaking your heads and just want to jump through the screen. What was it about that made you go, wait, yeah, he's exactly right?
Exactly right. The leadership is failing our people. They're not providing any kind of investigations. The recent death of this child last week, the person who assaulted the news people was let out of jail the next morning.
Because of why?
Because of friendship with the court, with the tribal leadership.
Speaking about the tribal court and tribal leadership, Kevin, I want to give you a chance to comment on this. A while back, Molly McDonald had a chance to visit. Molly, you sent me over a statement that said this. If we can bring this up, I want to read this to you, Kevin, and get both you and Molly a chance to visit. And this was in relationship, Kevin, to the scenario with Melissa Merrick about some things that you had been quoted as saying. Still haven't gotten proof from Melissa Merrick if that's the case. But a former tribal court judge at Spirit Lake said this, Molly McDonald, in my opinion, I believe the statements made by Kevin Cramer as they were quoted by Melissa Merrick are correct. If our own Native people cannot get a fair trial in Spirit Lake Tribal Court, how could a white person possibly get one? The appeals process set in place right now that Judge Kane speaks about in the article by Devil's Lake Journal dated October 11, 2012 is illegal because it was not approved by the people as required in our tribal constitution. I appreciate Mr. Cramer showing passion for our tribe's issues. No one else seems to be listening. Molly, that's a big statement. What are you saying there specifically?
I believe I was just trying to show support for Mr. Cramer. I applauded his comments once I found out about them in the press. I didn't understand Ms. Merrick's continuous making herself look like the victim in that scenario when I believe Mr. Cramer was speaking the truth.
But you're saying that Natives can get a fair trial in a tribal court.
Yes.
Do you all agree with that?
Very much so.
Why? Why are they not getting a fair trial?
It's who you know. It's nepotism. It's, are you related to the judge? Are you friends with the judge? Are you friends with a tribal council member? It's who you are. It's not what you did.
And is that why kids are then being thus put back in homes of convicted sex offenders?
Yes. Yes.
All right, I want to get to two more things quickly. Kevin, one of the things also that we discussed with these ladies earlier today was there's a thing called the individual Indian monies that go to young Indians in a lot of different fashions. But a guy by the name of Kevin Duffney, if I say that wrong, correct me, ladies, but apparently a lot of this money seems to go missing. Is that some of the things you need to find out from the BIA, and is that something you're aware of?
Well, I'm not aware of it, Chris. I've heard of other situations similar to this. I've had literally hundreds of our Indian citizens that I represent contact me about situations similar to the one you just described. And I don't know how much of it's confusion. I don't know how much of it is, just bad information. But there is a sense of desperation in Indian country. And I want you to know, I'm not judging anybody. I know many of these tribal chairmen. They're very good people. I'm looking forward to working with them to find solutions and not cast any judgment on them. I know others maybe feel differently, but I just really want to help Indian people. And that's regardless of who their leader is. We need to work together to find solutions. questions.
Kevin, I want to ask these three women a very specific question, let them respond and give you a chance just to hear what they have to say to this. I have no idea what they're going to say, but my question for all three of you is this. Are you putting your lives at risk by being here tonight and speaking out about this?
Yes.
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 How serious is it?
Very serious.
Talk to your cameraman.
Yes, talk to your cameraman.
Molly, you're just kind of shaking your head. What would you like to say?
This is a very touchy situation. A lot of people on the reservation are going to be offended by what's being said here tonight, and they will attempt to retaliate.
Kevin, I've got 60 seconds left. I just want to give you a chance to comment on these three women. As you just heard, two of them do live on the reservation, putting their lives at risk to speak out and protect these people.
Well, I want to remind you that Martin Luther King did the same thing. So did Abraham Lincoln. So did Dietrich Bonhoeffer when he stood up to Nazi Germany. All of them paid the ultimate price. I hope that never happens to you. We live in a country today where you need to be protected. You deserve protection. Having said that, what I really want to do is applaud the courage of these three women. This is tremendous, and this is what's been missing, quite honestly, in America lately, are these types of leaders who know that truth is worth standing up for, and it's worth taking tremendous risks for. And I know that they'll be rewarded for it, and I just want to be part of this solution.
Kevin, let me ask you this. Kevin, let me ask you a quick question here, because one of the things as we get into this that shocks me right now is I stand here and I don't know what the sexual molestation rate is on the reservation, but I'm willing to bet that very few of these people are being sexually molested by women, and yet there's not one man here sitting amongst us tonight, obviously other than you and I, but from the tribe, they're saying, hey, this has got to stop. What does that say to you?
It concerns me a great deal, Chris. It's a concern me about America at the broader level, and that is that men need to step up, and there aren't enough men stepping up. Our challenges today, a lot of times, have to do with, frankly, with men dominating instead of leading with gentle leadership. And the same thing needs to happen on the reservation. Here's what concerns me so much too is that they have a great, rich historical culture. Let's exercise that rich historical culture of family and traditional values, guys. Let's step up and let's show what real male leadership is all about. Those of you that know that what's going on is wrong,
Kevin,
step up. You'll be rewarded for it. It's in you. I know it is. It's part of your culture like it is mine.
Thank you so much for your time. Again, we appreciate you joining us from D.C. We've been doing a lot of travel. And stay with us when we come back. I want to visit with these three young women as to where are the men? Why aren't men stepping up from the reservation and saying, hey, wait a second, kids are being molested. It doesn't work for me. It's got to stop. I honestly haven't heard one man from the reservation, and maybe I'm missing this, but step up and say something so maybe they can correct me. Stay with us. If you want to have any feedback, thoughts, questions, comments, go to our website, 630pov.com. You can email us, text us, leave us a voicemail. We'll be right back. With me here in studio, we're talking about these Spirit Lake Reservation situations that are taking place. Former tribal court, Molly McDonald, judge, I should say, working with the social services up there on the reservation. Sister Joann and Bettie Jo Krenz used to work with social services as well. Again, thank you for the courage for being here and speaking out. One of the things we left with Congressman Cramer about, which, again, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing this, but I do not see a lot of men on the reservation standing up and saying, this is wrong, it needs to stop. They're the key people to stop this, aren't they? What am I missing?
Some of them might have skeletons in their closets. They're afraid to come out.
Molly?
I believe that the men there are showing leadership, but just in a different manner.
How specifically?
I know several men that are taking a stand. I am assisting. I'm volunteering to help with the petition drive. They're leading that right now. Again, I believe that the leadership on the tribal council should have a male. I shouldn't say should have, but would help.
And you said your brother now ran for a position with Fort Taunton, but somehow the election didn't quite go as planned, because I think one of the things that people are probably saying at home is, so how do we change this? And obviously that would be probably somewhat through the elections, I would presume, but it doesn't always work that way, correct?
Yep. From my understanding, the election wasn't followed in the process that it should have. Russell did win the initial election. However, Ms. Brownshield did
Contest.
the election, and she won it through the court order. However, there were just corruption involved in the process, and now he appealed this second election, and now wasn't given the appeals process that Clarice got.
We've been talking about on the show. One of the things I do want to mention that I didn't do a good job of is that, in case you haven't heard, in this most recent death of a 3-year-old, our camera crew was sent up there to cover the story. They went out to shoot some footage and whatnot, and our cameraman was assaulted. We pressed charges, and as Sister Joann had mentioned, this gentleman went to jail for 24 hours or so, and now we're trying to get the police report. We can't even get that. So there's zero transparency. So we keep asking ourselves, how do we solve this problem? But if we don't know what problems are occurring, they're pretty tough to solve. Women, again, thank you so much, you guys, for being here. I really appreciate having the courage and taking the time to do it. We will stay on top of the story as new things become revealed and come out. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to share with you what's coming up tomorrow night in the show. Hopefully get a chance to some of your feedback. And as always, be sure and join the conversation. Go to our website, 630pov.com. We'll be right back.